Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're taking a look at Varun Beverages Ltd, or VBL as they're known,
Jovial.
right?
Yeah.
We've got a big stack of information here, annual reports, their sustainability reports, and we even found some stuff on their corporate governance.
Nice.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
It's like we've got a backstage pass to one of the biggest beverage companies in the world.
Can you say that again?
So what's the plan for this deep dive?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to be looking at VBL's growth, how they make money in such a competitive market, and how they're managing all this expansion.
I think it's a really fascinating case study. VBL isn't just riding the wave of a growing industry. They're shaping it. It's their expansion, it's their focus on efficiency, and I think, most importantly, their deep understanding of what their customers want. That's really what sets them apart.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What exactly does VBL do?
Sure. So VBL is a major player in the beverage industry, and they are responsible for manufacturing and distributing a huge range of PepsiCo products.
Oh.
We're talking Pepsi, 7-Up, Mirinda, Mountain Dew, the drinks that you see everywhere.
So like if I was to grab a Pepsi right now,
Yeah.
there's a good chance it came from a VBL plant.
It's pretty likely, especially if you're in India. They operate in 27 states and 7 union territories in India. Plus, they've gone global as well, with operations in Nepal, Sri Lanka, Morocco, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. That's a lot of territory.
Yeah, it's a massive operation.
It is.
Their annual report says they've got 39 manufacturing plants, more than 120 depots, 2,500 vehicles for their fleet, and over 2,400 distributors.
Wow.
And on top of all that, they've got 1 million coolers out there keeping all those drinks cold.
That kind of scale is really mind-boggling, but what I think is more interesting is how they got there. VBL was founded in 1995, but their history in beverages actually goes back even further than that. Their chairman, Mr. Ravi Jaipuria, won the PepsiCo International Bottler of the Year Award in 1997. He's actually the only Indian company promoter to ever achieve that.
That's a pretty impressive start.
Oh, for sure.
It sounds like they've been setting the bar high from the very beginning.
Absolutely. And that early success, I think, really shaped their ambition. But if we kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture here, the Indian soft drink market is absolutely booming. There's a huge young population, rising incomes, and more people are moving to cities where it's much easier to get these drinks.
So it's kind of like a classic supply and demand situation,
Yeah.
right? More people wanting more drinks.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it's not as simple as just meeting that demand.
Yeah, you're right. Consumers in India are changing. They're becoming more health conscious. They want more variety. They're looking for new and innovative products. And that's where VBL's strategic expansion comes in. They're not just watching the market grow. They're actively trying to stay one step ahead.
So this recent expansion, into Mozambique and South Africa, they set up a subsidiary called VBL Mozambique, SA. That seems like a pretty bold move.
It is. It's a really clear signal that VBL has global ambitions. They're not just content with being a big player in India. They want to compete on a global scale.
Speaking of growth, their annual report shows a massive 22.5% compound annual growth rate in revenue between 2019 and 2023. That's incredible in any industry, but in a market as competitive as beverages, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that it's not concentrated in any one area. They're seeing volume growth across all of their geographies and in every single one of their product categories, even within the PepsiCo brands that they distribute. So clearly they're doing something right.
It's almost like they've cracked the code to growth.
Well, I think one of the key ingredients in that code is definitely their product portfolio. They're not just focusing on carbonated drinks. They have juices, bottled water. They're really covering every base.
Makes
And
sense.
they're always developing new products and new packaging to stay on top of trends.
So it's like they're not just giving people what they want today, but they're trying to figure out what they're going to want tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
But with all this growth, how are they managing their profitability? Are they having to sacrifice their margins to gain market share?
That's a really good question, and it's something that a lot of companies struggle with. But actually, VBL's profitability is really strong. They've consistently grown their EBITDA margins and profit after tax.
So they're not just expanding for the sake of expanding. They're making sure every new venture is adding to that bottom line.
Yeah, they're focused on efficiency, not just growth at any cost.
So what's the secret to that? How are they actually pulling it off?
Well, one key aspect is that they've been extremely focused on cost optimization and streamlining all of their operations. They're really squeezing the most out of every single rupee.
Okay, that makes sense in theory, but how are they actually doing that in practice?
Well, one way is their backward integration strategy. So they're not just buying raw materials from suppliers, they're actually getting involved in securing those materials themselves. They have 3 exclusive plants and 10 integrated plants. So that means that they've got more control over the quality and the cost of their ingredients,
Got
which is a huge advantage in a market where prices can fluctuate quite a bit.
So they're thinking ahead, not just about making the drinks, but about controlling that whole supply chain.
Yeah, it's really smart. It's a testament to their long-term vision. They're
Hmm.
not just reacting to the market. They're trying to anticipate what's going to happen and get ahead of it.
Okay, so we know they're growing, they're profitable, and they're thinking long term.
Yeah,
But what's next for VBL? Where do they go from here?
that's where things get even more interesting. Their market expansion strategy is really aggressive, but it's also very carefully calculated. They're not just expanding randomly, they're targeting specific regions and demographics.
Right.
And they're thinking about how to keep up with this growth. They've mentioned expanding production capacity by building new plants, like the one in Supa, Maharashtra.
Right.
But are they actually able to keep up with that? Are there existing plants at capacity right now?
That's a good question.
Well, capacity utilization is a major factor in their success. They've been really strategically investing in expanding their production to meet that rising demand.
Mm,
It's a balancing act, right? You don't want to overspend on capacity if you're not going to use it.
exactly.
BBL seems to have a pretty good handle on that balance.
It all sounds like it's incredibly well managed.
It is.
But with all of this investment and expansion, what about their debt levels? Are they taking on tons of debt to finance this growth?
That's where I think VBL really surprises you. Despite this aggressive expansion, they've actually kept their debt levels under control. They've maintained a pretty healthy debt-to-equity ratio, which basically means they're not over-leveraged.
So they're not just growing quickly, they're doing it sustainably.
Exactly.
How are they managing that?
Yeah.
Sounds almost too good to be true.
Well, there are a few things that play a role. They've got a strong grip on their cash flow and working capital management. They're making sure they've got enough cash on hand to cover their short-term obligations while still investing in growth.
Right.
Plus, their franchise model plays a big role here. They've got this huge network of franchisees that helps them penetrate those markets in a really efficient way.
So they're not trying to control every single aspect of the business themselves. They're empowering others to be a part of their success.
Yeah, it's a very collaborative approach.
But let's dig a little deeper into those franchises.
Mm-hmm.
How are they performing?
That's a great question. VBL has put a lot of effort into strengthening those relationships with their distributors, making sure their products are flowing smoothly to the consumer. They've also been focusing on building trust in collaboration with their franchisees, which is really key for their long-term success.
It sounds like they understand that their success is tied to the success of their franchisees.
Yeah, exactly. They're not just treating them as independent operators, they're really seeing them as partners in growth.
Right.
It's a much more sustainable model.
Okay, so they're growing, they're profitable, they're expanding globally, and they've got a great network of franchisees.
Yep.
It's almost like they've cracked the code for success in the beverage industry.
It seems that way, yeah.
But I'm sure they still face challenges.
Of course. No business is without its challenges, and VBL faces some pretty big ones. But what's really interesting is how they're approaching them. They're not just reacting to problems. They're trying to predict what's coming next and get ahead of it.
So it seems like a bit of a recurring theme with VBL that they're always thinking a few steps ahead.
Exactly. And that forward thinking is one of the reasons they've been so successful. But let's maybe unpack those challenges a bit more in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good to me. I'm ready to uncover that next layer of this fascinating company.
All right.
Stay tuned, deep divers. Just kidding. No breaks in this deep dive. We're diving straight in.
Haha. You know, before we jump into the challenges, there's one other piece of VBL's success that we should examine, and that's their sustainability initiatives.
Oh, wait.
It's not just like a trendy thing for them. They actually won awards and gotten some real recognition for their efforts.
Yeah, I remember seeing a whole section on sustainability in their annual report, and it wasn't just a couple of bullet points. It was like a whole detailed plan of action.
Yeah, exactly. They have a very comprehensive sustainability agenda that's built on several pillars. And they're not just talking the talk, they're actually walking the walk. One of their big focus areas is water stewardship.
Mm-hmm.
They know how important water is, especially in the beverage world, and they've set some pretty ambitious targets for water recharge. Their goal is to give back more water than they actually use.
That sounds like a really big undertaking. How are they actually putting that into practice?
Well, they have a whole team that's dedicated to constructing and maintaining ponds for water conservation. They're also working really hard to reduce their water consumption throughout their entire production process.
So it's a two-pronged approach then.
Yeah.
Conserve what's already there
Right.
and use less overall.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. But water isn't their only sustainability focus, is it?
You're right, it's not. They're also super committed to energy efficiency. They're trying to reduce their dependence on traditional energy sources and invest in renewables like solar and wind power.
Yeah, I remember reading about their solar panel installations and even their pilot program, using electric vehicles for distribution. That's pretty bold for a company of their size.
It is. It really shows they're serious about reducing their carbon footprint. And it's not just those big picture things either.
Right.
They're optimizing energy use across all of their operations. It's all about creating this company-wide culture of sustainability.
It's almost like they're trying to squeeze every bit of waste out of their system,
Yeah.
whether it's water or energy or anything.
Exactly. And speaking of waste, let's talk about the elephant in the room for any beverage company packaging.
Okay.
What are they doing about all those plastic bottles?
Curious to hear how they're tackling that one.
They're tackling it head on. VBL has set a goal to have 30% recycled PT, or RPT as they call it, in all their packaging by 2025.
So all those bottles you see on the shelf, they could be made from recycled materials.
Exactly.
That's great, but 30% still seems a little low, doesn't it?
Well, it's a really good first step, and they're actually going even further. They're already trying out bottles made from 100% reishi PET.
Wow.
Which is a huge breakthrough in reducing that plastic waste. Plus, they're working to reduce the overall weight of their packaging, which is another way to minimize their impact.
So they're really hitting it from every angle. Reduce, reuse, recycle. It's a pretty comprehensive approach.
Yeah.
But their sustainability efforts go beyond the environment, right? What about their social impact?
Absolutely. They're very involved in community engagement. They support all sorts of initiatives in education, healthcare, and even livelihood improvement in the areas where they operate.
I was really impressed with what they're doing with the Shiksha Kendra School, providing free education to children, and the AARU clinics, offering free healthcare.
Yeah, those are great examples. They're using their resources to make a real difference in those communities.
It is not just about charity. They're also working hard to foster diversity and inclusion within their own workforce.
They have some really impressive initiatives to support women and the LGBTQ+ community, creating a workplace where everyone feels valued and respected. I was really impressed with their sponsorship support for team members seeking gender-affirming surgeries. That's going above and beyond what a lot of companies are doing.
That's really impressive. It's clear that they're not just paying lip service to these ideas, they're really baking them into their company culture.
Yeah, and people are taking notice. They were even recognized as Employer of the Year by EFE Morocco. That says a lot about their commitment.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of great things here. VBL is a company that's growing really fast, they're profitable, they're innovative, and they're deeply committed to sustainability and ethical practices. It's honestly a bit inspiring.
It is. It's like they found the perfect balance. Great financial performance and a positive impact on the world.
Yeah, but you mentioned earlier that there are still challenges.
Right.
No business is immune to those.
Right. They operate in a really dynamic and competitive industry. One of the biggest challenges they face, and this goes for the entire beverage industry, is the concern over sugar consumption.
Yeah, that's a big one. Consumers are more health conscious than ever. They're definitely looking for alternatives to sugary drinks.
Exactly. And VBL is really aware of this. They're diversifying their portfolio, offering more low-sugar and zero-sugar options.
So they're not just trying to fight the tide, they're figuring out how to ride the wave.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They're being proactive, anticipating future trends and adapting.
And it's not just sugar content. They're also looking at other ways to make their products healthier, reducing calories and using natural ingredients.
Yeah, it's almost like they're trying to reinvent the beverage industry one drink at a time.
In a way they are, pushing boundaries, challenging the status quo, showing that a beverage company can be both successful and responsible.
Right. It's not just about profits. It's about building a sustainable business that benefits everyone.
Consumers, employees, the community, the planet.
Exactly. That holistic approach is what really sets VBL apart. They're not just focused on the bottom line. They want to make a positive impact on the world.
Okay, so we know they're taking on that sugar challenge.
Yeah.
What are some of the other headwinds they're facing?
Well, another one is competition. The beverage industry is incredibly competitive.
Yeah.
Tons of big players vying for market share.
You've got Coca-Cola, you've got PepsiCo, Nestle, countless smaller brands,
Yeah.
all fighting for space on the shelves and the attention of consumers. It's a really crowded market.
It is. VBL has to be constantly innovating, improving efficiency, finding ways to stand out from the crowd. They can't afford to stand still.
Or they'll get trampled.
Right, exactly. It's like they're running a marathon, but they have to sprint the whole way just to keep up.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So how are they doing that? What are some of the strategies they're using to stay competitive?
Well, one big one is their focus on product innovation. They're constantly developing new products and new flavors, experimenting with packaging formats and sizes to make sure they've got something for everyone. They mentioned developing new products for specific markets, like their new iced tea from Morocco.
Right. So they're not just taking the same products and trying to sell them everywhere. They're really tailoring their offerings to different tastes and preferences.
Yeah, localization is really key for success in a globalized world. It's like they're speaking the language of each market,
Right.
offering products that make sense for the local consumers.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
What about their distribution? They mentioned having this vast network of distributors and investing in those relationships. Why is that so important?
It's all about getting those products on the shelves and into the hands of consumers. If you don't have a strong distribution network, it doesn't matter how good your product is, it's not going to reach anyone. They need those distributors and retailers to be their partners, their advocates.
So it's not just about selling to them, it's about building trust and collaboration.
Exactly. And VBL seems to get that. They're investing in those relationships, providing training and support, and really working together to grow the business.
It's a win-win then.
It's
The distributors benefit from selling a popular product, and VBL gets that strong network.
Yeah.
What about marketing?
Yeah, marketing and advertising are absolutely essential.
Of course.
They have to get the word out, create that buzz, build brand awareness.
Right. They talked about leveraging those PepsiCo brands, but they're also trying to build their own brand identity, right?
They are. They're using all sorts of different marketing channels. Traditional media, like television and print, but also digital channels, social media, online advertising. They're casting a wide net, trying to reach consumers wherever they are.
Right. But they're not just shouting into the void, are they? It seems like they're really trying to connect with their target audience.
Yeah, that personal touch is essential for building brand loyalty and driving sales.
Okay, so they've got a pretty solid strategy for staying competitive.
Yeah.
But realistically, there's always the risk that something could happen, something totally unexpected that could shake things up.
You're absolutely right. No business is immune to these unexpected challenges. And for a beverage company like VBL, those challenges could come from a lot of different places.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, one potential risk is that consumer preferences change. What if people just suddenly decide they don't like carbonated drinks anymore?
Right?
Or what if a totally new type of drink comes along and just blows everything else out of the water?
Like those plant-based protein drinks that everyone's crazy about these days.
Exactly. VBL has to be constantly watching what consumers are doing, trying to anticipate those changes and adapt their products accordingly. They can't afford to get complacent.
So they need to be agile, flexible, ready to switch things up if they need to.
Exactly. Another risk is government regulation. What if the government suddenly decides to tax sugary drinks?
Yeah.
Or impose some new labeling requirements? That could really increase their costs.
These are valid concerns. Governments all over the world are starting to worry about the health implications of sugary drinks, and they're taking steps to try and reduce consumption.
Exactly. And VBL has to be ready for that. They need a team that can keep an eye on the political situation, be able to anticipate any potential changes.
So they need to be politically savvy on top of everything else.
Right. And then there's always the possibility of an economic downturn. What if the economy goes into a recession? Consumer spending goes down.
That's always a risk for any business.
Yeah.
But especially for a consumer goods company like VBL.
Right. People start tightening their belts. They're going to cut back on things they don't absolutely need.
And drinks are one of the first things to go.
Exactly. So VBL has to be ready to weather that storm, adjust their pricing, maybe change their marketing to appeal to those more price-sensitive consumers.
So it's all about being lean and efficient even when things are good.
Exactly. Another potential risk is a disruption to their supply chain. What if there's a natural disaster that affects one of their production facilities? Or a labor strike?
Yeah, those are all valid concerns. The global supply chain is so complex these days, there are a million things that could go wrong.
Exactly. VBL has to have plans in place to deal with any kind of disruption, diversify their suppliers, build up their inventory, have backup production facilities just in case.
So it's like that old saying, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Exactly. And then there's the risk of reputational damage. What if there's a product recall? Or what if they get accused of some unethical labor practices?
Those are nightmare scenarios for any company,
They are.
especially for a consumer goods company that really relies on brand trust.
VBL has to be extremely careful about protecting their reputation. They need to have good quality control procedures, make sure their products are safe, they need to be ethical and transparent.
So it's not just about making money, it's about doing it the right way.
Exactly. And VBL seems to understand this. They've invested a lot in building a strong corporate governance structure and a solid risk management framework. They're not taking these risks lightly.
It's almost like they're playing a game of chess, trying to anticipate every move and plan their strategy accordingly.
Yeah, that's a great analogy that they're not just reacting to things as they happen. They're really thinking ahead, trying to stay one step ahead of the competition and any potential problems.
It's an impressive approach,
Yeah.
but even with all that planning and risk management, there's always a chance that something unexpected could happen.
Oh, absolutely. That's just the nature of business.
Right.
There are always going to be unknowns, things you can't control. But the best companies are the ones that are prepared for anything, the ones that can adapt and evolve as the market changes. And from everything we've seen, BBL seems to be one of those companies.
I think I agree with you. They're a fascinating case study.
They are.
A company that's defying the odds and achieving some pretty incredible success.
I'm curious to hear your final thoughts on VBL. What's the big takeaway here?
Well, I think VBL's success is a testament to the power of vision, strategy, and execution. They had a clear idea what they wanted to do, they figured out how to get there, and then they put that plan into action. But it's more than that. It's about creating a culture of excellence,
Okay.
innovation, and responsibility. Understanding that a company's value goes beyond just how much money it makes.
Right.
It's about their impact on the world.
Exactly. VBL is proving that you can be successful and responsible, that you can grow your business and make the world a better place at the same time.
That's really inspiring. It's almost like they've figured out the secret formula for sustainable success.
I think they have. And it's a formula that other companies should definitely pay attention to. It's about finding that balance between profits and purpose, between short-term gains and long-term impact.
Well said. I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Deep divers, we've covered a lot of ground today. From the ins and outs of VBL's business to their global strategy, their sustainability efforts, and even those potential risks they face. It's been a fascinating journey, and I hope you've learned as much as we have.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you. VBL is a company worth watching, a company that's setting a new standard for what's possible in the beverage industry.
I couldn't agree more. Until next time, keep exploring and keep that thirst for knowledge quenched.
Happy diving.
It's amazing to think about how much we've learned about VBL
Yeah.
just from these documents.
I know, right?
We went from, what they do to their plans for going global, their whole sustainability thing.
Yeah.
Even the stuff they have to worry about, the risks and all that.
It's a lot.
It shows just how complex VBL really is.
Definitely. They're not just some beverage company. They're like a global powerhouse.
Yeah.
And they've got this really interesting approach to business.
Right. And through it all, they're still committed to being ethical and sustainable.
Yeah.
It's honestly kind of refreshing to see.
It really is. It proves that a company can make money and do the right thing.
Exactly. You don't have to choose one or the other.
Nope.
Okay, so we've talked about the big picture, but now I want to get into some of the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's look at their numbers, their financials.
Okay.
We know their revenue's growing, they're making a profit, but what else can we see?
Well, one thing that really sticks out to me is their cash flow. They're amazing at generating cash.
Yeah, cash is king, yeah.
Exactly. And VBL, they've got a royal treasury.
They're consistently bringing in cash from their operations, which means they've got the flexibility to, invest in growth, pay their shareholders,
Yeah.
even manage their debt.
It's really impressive.
Yeah.
They're not just profitable on paper.
Right.
They've got actual money they can use.
To grow their business and take care of their investors.
Exactly.
And that strong cash flow, that shows us they've got efficient operations. And they're really disciplined about how they handle their finances.
You were talking about their cost optimization strategies before.
Right.
That sounds like they're experts at squeezing every last drop.
They're good at it, that's for sure.
Huh.
But it's not just about cutting costs randomly, is it?
No, absolutely not.
It has to be strategic.
It has to be strategic. They can't compromise quality or hurt their growth.
It's all about finding that balance,
Hmm.
efficiency and effectiveness.
Yeah,
And VDL seems to have it figured out.
they really do. It all shows in their numbers. Their revenue's up, profits are up,
Uh,
and they're still keeping that debt under control.
you mentioned their debt to equity ratio before. It's pretty impressive, especially with how fast they're growing.
It really is. It tells me they're really careful with their debt,
Makes sense.
which means they can be flexible and adapt as the market changes.
So they're not just sprinting, they're in it for the long haul.
Yeah, they're pacing themselves.
Thinking about sustainability, not just in the environment, but in their business, too.
Exactly. It's like they're running a marathon, making sure they can go the distance.
This is like a masterclass in managing your finances.
I know, right?
Okay, let's look at some of the numbers, the specifics. What should we be paying attention to?
Well, for any beverage company, the most important thing is volume growth.
Makes sense.
It's all about selling those drinks, getting them out there.
Yeah.
So how's VBL doing? They're doing great. Their volume growth is really impressive across the board.
You said they're seeing growth everywhere? In India, internationally.
All their products, even those PepsiCo brands, it's amazing.
It really is.
Yeah.
They're not just relying on one thing.
Right.
They've got all these different drinks, and they're all doing well. It's like every part of their business is working.
It really is. What do you think is driving that growth?
Well, the beverage market is growing in general,
That's true.
especially in India and those developing markets.
Yeah.
So they're in the right place at the right time.
But they're not just riding that wave.
Right.
They're actually outperforming the market.
Which means they're doing something extra, something special.
Yeah.
What do you think it is?
Well, their distribution network is incredible. They've put so much work into building that system.
They've got tons of distributors, all those coolers.
It's huge.
Yeah. They can reach pretty much anyone.
And they keep working on those relationships, making sure the product is always there.
Yeah. Execution is key.
It is.
Making sure people can get a drink when they want one.
Exactly. So we know their volume growth is good. What else should we look at?
Well, EBITDA margin is another important one.
Okay, yeah.
That tells us how profitable they are.
For those of us who don't speak finance, break that down for me.
Sure, EBITDA, it stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Got it.
It basically tells you how good a company is at making money from their core operations.
Okay.
It takes out all the fancy accounting stuff so you get a clear picture.
I like clear pictures.
And how's VBL doing? They're doing great. Their EBITDA margins are strong and they keep getting better.
That's what you want to see.
It means they're not just growing, they're becoming more profitable as they grow.
So they're not just getting bigger, they're getting better at what they do.
Exactly. We've got the volume, we've got the profit margins. What else is there?
Well, I always wonder how good a company is at using their investors' money to make a profit.
Yeah,
What about their return on equity, their ROE?
that's a great question. ROE is really important for investors, and VBL is doing amazing in that area too. Their ROE is high, which means they're making their shareholders happy. That's the dream, right?
It is.
Making money and making sure your investors get a good return.
Exactly. That high ROE tells us that VBL is managed well.
Right.
They're efficient, they're not taking on too much debt, they're just doing a great job all over.
Wow, this deep dive has been so insightful. I feel like I really understand VBL now.
Me too.
Their whole business, how they think, what they're doing.
They're a remarkable company.
They're a success story, for sure. And I think we can all learn something from them.
I think so too.
They're showing us that you can be successful and responsible.
Yeah.
You can make money and still make a positive impact on the world.
It's a powerful message.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's not just about the profits, it's about making a difference.
Exactly. And VBL is showing that it's possible.
It's like they've found the secret formula.
Maybe they have. It's about balance, making money and having a purpose, thinking about the future and what kind of impact you're going to leave.
How well said. I think it's time to wrap things up. Deep divers, we've spent a lot of time exploring VBL, learning about their business, their strategy, how they perform. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did.
It was great to share these insights with you. VBL is a company to keep your eye on. They're changing the game.
Yeah, they're raising the bar for everyone.
Until next time, keep exploring.
Keep learning. Keep diving deep.
Happy diving.